long as I don't have a major Zoom fail, it should be good. Okay, so hopefully you can see the presentation, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so as you know, this is a part of the continuous improvement process for Nebraska schools, and you guys have been through quite a process over the past 5 years. And so that was something as a team we definitely recognized. You've done a lot of things to show your commitment to improvement. So that just goes over the cycle, and keep in mind that it's continuous, which you guys seem to have made that a part of your culture. So the profile, which you guys provided us with a lot of good information and some questions, which we were happy to follow up on as far as your data, and both perceptual data and student performance data, and any sort of summary statements that we developed as a part of that. And if you guys have questions or anything doesn't make sense, just stop us and let us know. Okay, so part of that process, you're looking at the data, prioritizing and identifying areas of improvement or goals. You had a couple action plans that you developed as a part of your review in 2016. And whoops, phooey. And we did recognize, you know, you had that statement about all staff being important, and that went beyond just certificated staff. And it does appear that all staff are a part of your process. And so you've implemented some things, you've done those over a period of time, and now you're starting to see some improved performance. So the reason we're here now is Rule 10. We had a discussion, and I don't know how much you guys have been involved in that. It will be really interesting to see after the Rule 10 revisions, what comes out. I think we're all anxious to see as they take Rule 10 and Rule 14 and roll out those 3 different rules, what is included in it, each one of those. And what I have heard at least is your cycle for continuous improvement may be a little bit different. It may be a 3-year, or it may be a little longer than 5 years. And so it's always fun to see what is next. Okay, and so one of the main reasons is you're required to have a visitation by an external team, and here we are. And I just want to compliment the rest of the team. It was a great group to work with. You know, it was Chris's first visit, and I always think it's probably just as important for team members as it is for the school that this is a process that's useful for them. And we all know great teachers have gotten where they are because they know how to borrow things from others. And so we appreciate your willingness to share, and the openness of everybody that we talk to as a part of the presentation. Okay, and so we're here to assist you in looking at your plan, you know, here to offer any sort of advice. And I know when I visited with you, you guys were interested in having both a math teacher and another superintendent, because Mr. Richardson is new in the position this year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, hopefully we're able to provide you with some helpful information. And also, I think when you're in a small rural school in Nebraska, you're kind of, no matter what position you're in, you're kind of jack of all trades, master of none. And another part of this that I think is really helpful is it helps you develop that network of people that you can reach out to if you have questions. And so, you know, we're here as a part of this, but if there's a way that we can be of help later on, let us know too, because we're happy to be a sounding board or whatever it is. Okay, and so March 9th and 10th, 2021, that's hard to believe that we're more than 3/4 of the way, or at least 3/4 of the way through the 2021 school year. You know who we all are because we introduced ourselves to start with. And so we started with your goals from before, and these were as a result of your 2016 visit, and you guys received some special assistance from NDE as a part of being chosen as a priority school. You had two goals: that students will have equitable access to a high quality education to meet or exceed academic growth goals, and that teachers and administrative team will continue to build their collective leadership capacity. And so I am going to turn it over to Chris. And you know what? We didn't talk about what sort of signal you're going to give me when you want me to advance the slides. I didn't realize I had the power. So you're just going to have to say okay when you want me to click, Chris. Oh, Chris, I think you're mute. Ted, sorry.
Nope, thank you. I apologize.
Oh, and if you want to introduce yourself, Jeff said that was the suggestion, and I just started talking without introducing myself. So hopefully y'all remember who I am.
Chris Toole, Elm Creek Public Schools. Some of your accommodations for your goal number 1 were expanding your technology to support and enhance your educational program. We liked how you got the more Chromebooks in and updating your technology. We heard that you have a lot of online classes going on, either through distance learning or actually online, to meet the needs of the students for the classes that you don't have within the school system. Your learning targets seem to be a common practice throughout all your teachers, and we can see your long range plans are going to be great for your school as well. And then your new instructional resources, implementing new reading and then new math in the high school and the elementary. And those are your accommodations. Your recommendations is to continue and build and expand upon your long range plans, including a timeline to guide you towards completion. We thought I think we heard that some of the teachers were just trying to do one a year. And maybe if you create a timeline, we think that the long range plans maybe need to be concluded before, 7 years. If you do one class a year, that'd be a long time to complete long-term plans. To develop a proactive technology plan that includes a schedule for device replacement, network improvements, and integration of your technology standards. I know the teachers said some of them were integrating technology standards and others weren't. So just to make everybody aware of those. And then Chromebooks, I know don't have very long shelf life. So making sure you have a plan ready to replace those when they are done for, I guess. And then the third recommendation would be to articulate an instructional model. I know that you have your prioritized or your strategies, and you have 11 of those. We thought maybe you should prioritize, and we didn't know if you already did prioritize some of those standards that you're looking for a specific amount, or like a specific 3 or 4 that you really are focused on and that you have them all available. But we thought the 11 was kind of a lot for everybody to focus on. And then kind of incorporating those into an instructional model.
Sorry, I'm a little click happy here. Okay, so Rod's going to take number 2. So goal number 2 is.
Okay, we'll do that. Rod Olson here, the superintendent at Wheeler Central Schools. And the first one here we have here with accommodations is a team structure. You have a team structure that provides opportunities for all staff to be involved, and it's not just a few of the staff. I mean, across the board, when we talk to people, that was reinforced by students as well. It's a team effort. Is reinforced by the administration there and by board members and community members. They see that team, I guess you say flavor or caveat. Staff members have leadership roles within the district. I know in small districts, we have to wear a lot of hats. And in the case there at Loup County, it seems like you have staff members that over that 5-year period picked up even additional things, and they acknowledged they were stressed. It was tough going for a while, but they feel like the effort has been worth it. The rewards have been worth it, and they feel that things are manageable now as far as those multiple roles in leadership or shared leadership. Also, I'm going to kind of pick on Rod just a little bit. because I know him personally as a principal from down south. Uh, my feelings are that you got someone who is going to listen to everybody, make a final decision, but is going to constantly take input in. And that's kind of the way I work as well. And I think that's a constructive model. Third thing, decision making at the administrative level is based on input data, many stakeholders, and that's kind of what I just hit on here as well. Again, we had parents that said that the administration is approachable. We have teachers that are saying the administration is approachable. We have kids that are saying that the administration is approachable and they feel comfortable in talking with you. The board is very knowledgeable about the daily operation of the district. I was really impressed about that. I know there are sometimes boards are removed a little bit, but your board seemed to have a good grasp of your high ability components, your multi-tier system of support components. I mean, the classes or courses that you're changing curriculum in, they're aware of that. They're aware of the changes that have occurred in the elementary. So a great deal of knowledge there. And I think part of that that's helped that knowledge base is when they were forced or your district was forced to look at that improvement plan and come in and the district members or board members are able to come in and sit in the classroom as parents were able to do as well. Okay. Okay, recommendations. First one we have here is continue fostering effective communication with district stakeholders. We believe that you've been very effective in that area and continue that. A school, I'm going to make the assumption that Loup County is not very different from Wheeler Central in that are such a critical issue, enrollment numbers that we have to have our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the community, what the community feels important, how we go about meeting those needs. If we don't,
Excuse me. Rod, you're fading out.
oops, better. I'm sorry about that. Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, sorry about that. Were you able to hear the other jabber that I Phil?
No.
Nothing?
We lost you like when you started in on number 2, I believe.
Okay, explore ways to engage in a collaborative network. Okay, we'll are at the top of number 2. Okay, continue fostering effective communication with district stakeholders. I think you guys do a very good job of that, and you'll want to continue to do that. I was using Wheeler Central as an example. We're a comparable school for size. We have a lot of the same concerns that you guys have, and our biggest concern is keeping numbers. We bleed off a few kids to school districts that are actually closer than us, and we need to try to retain and not have those kids opt out. Well, you gotta have your finger on the pulse of the community. You gotta find out what their needs are, what their expectations are, and try as best you can to meet those. And I think you guys are doing an excellent job with that, and continue that. An example of that is that preschool. I think that you put that in, and that's not a cheap item to put in, but I think if you stay with it, that preschool is gonna pay you, gonna provide definite benefits down the road. Okay, item number 2, explore ways in which to engage in collaboration or collaborative networking and planning that builds instructional and leadership capacity, possibly through the service unit. Again, when you're small like you guys are, like we are here, oftentimes you are an individual teacher is the department. And sometimes you need to turn to other places for help, and the service units provide a great deal of support. Continue to use those. In the case of, and I'm going to throw something out here for you guys to think about. In the case of Wheeler Central, we're part of what's called the Northern Tier Consortium of Schools. Used to be 10 schools, now it's down to 7. If you would ever be interested in that, they may be willing to let you guys join that Northern Tier Consortium. We talk, administrators bounce ideas off of one another. We have teachers by content area will get together throughout the year. All the elementary staff get together throughout the year. So those types of collaborative networking projects are very important, and keep those up. Develop a plan to attract and retain quality educators. Now, that's one that I sense that you're talking about some staff that have been there for a long time, and as you have turnover, you lose all of the expertise that you had with those people. So I don't know what you have in mind as far as trying to keep those staff members. But I know that someone made the comment, oh my gosh, our science teacher's been here for so long. They're just a wealth of information there. I don't know what we do if they ever go. So those are the types of things that if you can work with other school districts or work with people in your community, you might look at transitional certificates even. I know we've had to train people from within. We got a daycare, and our daycare is provided as of next year 4 of our elementary teachers. We use them in the daycare for a year or two. We're able to assess what kind of person they are. And then we have an opening in the elementary, we move them in and we advertise for another daycare teacher. So those are things that you can think about. Any questions?
Is that daycare? Is that housed in the school, or is it a separate?
Actually, it's in our old dormitory. We used to have a male dormitory and girls dormitory here at one time because our kids were spread out so far. And so we have 4 apartments in our women's dormitory, and it's one of those apartments. So it's about 1,200 square feet, and it's a Rule 11 daycare. It is fairly expensive, but we're hopefully in 6 weeks, we'll have a health and human services daycare in our basement that's 1,600 square feet. And that's for the community. And I'll be honest with you, part of the reason for that is so we could keep teachers. We would not have our current high school English teacher, our current high school science teacher, our preschool teacher, and we got 4 teachers. I'm trying to think of the 4. We got 4 teachers that we would not have if we did not have that daycare to provide those services for them. And they do pay a nominal fee, but it's really been a value. And plus, we're able to use that as a source of early intervention for some of our birth to 3 age group for special ed.
So you actually, the person that's hired to do that is paid as a teacher with a teacher contract?
Well, what we have enough capacity because we could take up to 12, but right now we're limited to 8 because we have some infants, or an infant anyway. Actually, we got 2 of them, but because of that, we're limited a little more. But what that's allowed us to do is to keep those teachers, because all they have to do is walk across the street, or just walk. Not even cross the street in the case of the high school, just walk over to that building, and they can drop their son or daughter off. They can pick them up after school, and it runs from 7:15 till 4:30. And we're also looking at, we got some money to put another daycare, hopefully within a year, in Erickson, because we want to stop bleeding off students to Central Valley, Ord, and Burwell. And that's probably some of the same schools you bleed students off to.
I might call you later and ask some more questions on that.
Absolutely. And feel free to come up, okay?
Will you buy these lunch?
Sure. You come up, I'll buy you lunch if you pay for your cost of fuel to get up here.
Yeah.
And we have some good food places up here too.
All right, and so you guys had presented the team with some questions as a part of your presentation, and Jeff is going to address those.
All right, and I'm Jeff McQuiston, Staff Development Director at ESU 17 in Ainsworth. And so, yeah, these were the 4 questions, and I really appreciated your perspective on wanting to get answers to those questions. So this is based on our team's conversation and some ideas and some things for you to think about as you move forward. So we can go ahead to the next slide, Geraldine. So the first question was, is there a better way for small schools to show data? And I understand the challenge of being a small district, because a lot of times even classroom data might be one student. So you're trying to get away from identifying individual students. So here are some ideas that we would throw at you, and maybe you've already thought about these. So number one, continue with your display of whole district data, because that is probably, that's your big picture. That's where we're at as a district. And then as you disaggregate, look at the student groups that are probably the most viable for you to consider. Look for, okay. And so some of those students groups may be by building, where you've got your elementary data separate from your middle school, separate from your high school. You also might consider some of your demographic grouping, where it might be free and reduced meals versus your non-free and reduced meals, just so that you have some way to kind of look and see what specific populations might have more needs than others, so that you can address those. Looking at data over a trend of years, recently that's been kind of difficult, especially with the state assessment, because there's been so many changes there. But you've had your map data over time. And so that would be kind of a static piece of data information that you have been using to display performance and looking for trends over a period of time. Right now, you have been looking primarily at your student growth. That's been one of your goals, as well as student performance that's at least at the 40th percentile. What we would encourage you to do is start looking at more of those proficiency level factors, as far as what percent of your students are on track, are at that college and career ready level, because that's going to, if you're doing that, especially with your map data, that's going to give you some pretty good indicators of how your state performance is going to be. We didn't see any of that data specifically, but I think that would be important to look at down the road. You're aware that the state assessment is going to be undergoing a change next year, where it's not going to be just the individual spring event, that it's going to be more of a through year opportunity. So there's going to be multiple opportunities for students to demonstrate proficiency. I think that's a good thing. But with that, there's going to be new ways to display your data. So you'll have additional opportunities then. There's a couple of other additional criteria that we threw on this slide because it was related to this, but it was a little bit different. Right now, you shared that you typically cap your HAL identification at 10%. And what we might offer you to consider is maybe look at a standard performance rather than a percentage that limits how many students you can identify. So everyone who's at that 90th percentile, maybe they would be included in your overall HAL identification. The state gives districts complete latitude on how you identify. And if you've got 50% of your students that are identified as high ability, as long as you feel that the means for identifying those students are viable and doesn't prohibit anyone from being identified, we would just have you consider that. Also, review individual data more frequently for tier placement and support based on clearly defined decision rules. Basically, we know that you're using your map assessment to identify the specific supports that students need, and that can translate into what level of tier support those students may need. Once a semester may not be frequent enough, especially if students are making those gains quickly and are ready to go back to a more appropriate level, or if students have needs that are developed within the course of a semester, but then they're not identified until later. So we would just consider you to maybe consider a more flexible way of identifying when students would transition between those tiers and the support that you would provide for them.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
On the HAL. So are you saying, is there a difference between the local school district identifying HAL students and like the HAL report that is required by the state? as far as identifying students? Or because and it may have changed, but I know that Mr. Rupert, the former superintendent, always was heavily involved in that process and said that there was always a cap on how many students could be in the HAL program.
Okay, I have never heard that specifically. And I know, I mean, if you look at the NEP and you look at different school districts, some districts will have, I know I've seen districts up to 24% of their students are identified. So I don't think that there is a cap on how many, what percent can be identified. So
Okay, I thought it was a certain percent of the student body that that would be awesome if it's not.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that you're in the driver's seat there and there is no limit to who you can identify.
Okay.
The important thing is, and we appreciate hearing the opportunities that you are providing for those students as well. It's not necessarily a HAL program, but you've got some incentives in place or some nice opportunities for students where they might have the first dibs on being able to participate in a specific event, which I think is more incentivizing than, okay, since we have identified you as high ability, we are now going to put you here, which, you know, some students resist that and don't want to be singled out or have extra layers of responsibility and expectation placed on them. So I think that you're approaching your HAL very well. But now I think just making that opportunity available to more students.
All right, thanks.
All right. So beyond student performance data, there's also data that would be generated from the surveys that you, oh wait, no, I moved that to the next slide. So, okay. So your request was for displaying data, which we've talked a little bit about. I just wanted to make sure we touched on the points that, you know, how you display your data is very important, but also the follow-up pieces to that to make sure that you're analyzing what you're seeing and that you're making decisions based on that. And you're communicating to your stakeholder groups, here's what we're seeing, or here's what you've said, and here's what we're doing about it. And as Rod mentioned before, you've got a really healthy communication process with your stakeholders. Just use that to share your data and the decisions that you're making. And I think we've also heard, I think it was from a board member, that when you've got some exciting data that's happening as a result of something, that you're celebrating that. And I think that also that's very important, and making sure that your community is aware of that. All right, Geraldine. So question number 2, the specific request was what have been some effective survey tools that we've seen, and what might we suggest to replace the NDE surveys? I guess from my perspective, the NDE surveys are pretty good, but I'm also aware that they are in the process of updating those surveys and making them a little bit more flexible and usable. So where if you just wanted to survey a specific survey based on a specific theme or topic, you can do that without having to do the complete battery of questions. So I know NDE is in the process right now of revising that. And I think within the next couple of years, there will be some more options available. So I guess I would just encourage you to stay the course. I think that the NDE surveys do a nice job of highlighting those areas that would be most helpful for districts to be aware of. One thing that some school districts do, and I'm not saying that your district does, but some districts, they will administer those surveys just because it's required to. And once they get their results, they really don't do anything much with it. So I would just encourage you to, when you get those survey results in, look and see what your stakeholders are saying, and respond to what some of those topics are by making some internal changes that help to make your learning climate more positive for students, and then communicating that with your stakeholder groups to make sure that they're aware of what's happening, and that their input matters and that you're following up on that. I think that helps to provide nice communication and partnership with your stakeholders. And also just some considerations when you're displaying data or analyzing your data, maybe looking at what the top 3 responses are or the bottom 3 responses are per stakeholder group, seeing if there's any similarities there. And looking at specific items across different stakeholder groups to see how different stakeholder groups are responding, if there's any kind of correlation there. And then one challenge that we had was you shared with us the data that you had for your school stakeholder results, but they were all separate. And I know sometimes those results can be combined together so that you can kind of see, here's a survey that we administered to our staff over a 3-year period, and all 3 years are graphed on that same chart so that you can kind of see the changes that happen from year to year. And that might be more useful for you when you're looking at your results. I'm not sure if that, when you go into NEP Secure, if those surveys results are formatted that way, or if it's just single event to single event.
Single event.
Well,
I've
okay.
noticed.
So then there's not much you can do with overlaying those results unless you manually do that yourself, and that's rather tedious. But I think it's really helpful to be able to see that, and if you're sharing that with stakeholder groups, or your staff is analyzing it, being able to see that comparison year to year would be really helpful. And maybe with the new rollout that NDE is looking at, they might do that for us. I'm on that committee, so I might put in that request.
So is there
Jeff,
a-
can I ask a quick question, Jeff, or did you have something else, Ken?
Well, I was just going to ask a question, and it might be the same one, about whether this survey should be done annually or every 2 years sufficient.
Well, you've probably got the best understanding of your school community. I think the recommendation NDE would say would be annually, especially in case if you've responded to a survey results and you want to see if there's a change in what your stakeholders are seeing. I think that it would be important to do that annually, especially if you've responded specifically to what those survey results are.
Okay.
Dallas?
That was going to be, I think, Ken, we've been hanging out too much. Thinking alike now, that's scary. My question was going to be along that same lines, because a lot of times we recommend, doing it year 1, 3, and 5, so that you aren't over surveying your parents and your other stakeholders. But I can also see that there would be some merit in doing it every year. And if you're specifically looking at certain topics or things like that, that you want to get a gauge of how people are feeling about that maybe it would be a year-to-year thing. So definitely something for them to consider.
Yeah.
As
And
they move
one other thing is, and I know you've got some parents that have children at elementary, middle, and high school, which when a parent's answering that survey, who are they really answering on behalf of? And sometimes those results aren't real clear. So, another option would be, we're going to do an elementary survey this year, a middle school survey the next year, high school survey a following year, just so that especially when you're getting parent feedback, that you know specifically what grade level bands that's in response to, and it makes it a little easier for the parent to answer their survey.
That's a good idea. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, Geraldine.
Next.
Yep. So question number 3 was, what might you suggest to strengthen our curriculum process? And so, okay, the first thing I had on there, identify the universal components that all curriculum areas must include. So if it's your learning objective, it's the resources that you're using, the key vocabulary that is being addressed or included in each specific unit within a course. I think that's up to the district to identify, but I think that there, as we heard the teachers sharing on their curriculum work, it sounded like they had some common components, but they were given quite a bit of latitude in how to articulate that work. And there might be some have-tos that you want to identify specifically. I think that would be important. And also, as Chris mentioned earlier, you might want to have a timeline for completion. I know the teachers shared that initially they were expected to complete that work for everything within a semester, which they admitted the quality of the work was not real great at that point. And so when they were given more latitude to articulate a course within a year, they felt much better about that. But also, as Chris mentioned, how long do you want that stretched out? You might want to shorten that up so that then it's about updating. It's not simply about the articulation. And a nice guideline that we try to follow up here at ESU 17 is kind of working those curriculum updates around when NDE updates the standards, because that's a nice opportunity then to go back in, make those adjustments right then and there. Once those standards are approved, that way it helps to keep it more ongoing and less arduous than what you're looking at right now. And then I included a link there. I'm going to put that in the chat so you can also access that. It sounds like right now teachers are working independently and creating their own curriculum. What's the technical term for the curriculum work that they're using? Long range plans?
Correct.
And so they're kind of all working independently. It was unclear as far as if that was being housed in a central location. But here's an example. It's a template that I've kind of put together for districts in our ESU, where the whole district's curriculum is articulated in a Google site. And
Do you want me to click on it, Jeff?
well, I gave them the link so that they could see, and I think and Dallas has got it there too. I think it's just a nice central location. And if you were to create a fictitious Google account within your domain that was the owner of that, and then everyone had access to it, who has your particular email, that would allow for anyone to go in and update and edit whatever curriculum that they were responsible for. But the nice thing is you would have immediate access on a single platform that would allow you to see where everything is at. So this is just one example. And the nice thing is you're a smaller district with not a lot of different specific course offerings. You don't have multiple teachers within a same high school department with tons and tons of courses. So the key would be to find a format that works best for you. One thing that I did in this is I had a place to include the standards, and a lot of times when we're identifying the standards that are associated with a particular unit of instruction, it's just the code number and it's not the language of the standard. And I think it's really important to have that language of the standard there too, so that you can make that easy connection to what's happening within each of those units. So that would be a consideration that I would offer.
Excuse me, Jeff.
Sure.
Hey, we were just curious if you, by chance, seen the long range plans in our on our site.
I did, Bob. I checked in on maybe 2 or 3 teachers. Yeah.
Okay. Is that kind of like, I mean, we don't have that up, of course, the universal platform, but we were just kind of curious if that's kind of like the same lines, because we do have the expectations of what we want listed down there. We have examples, as well as all the teachers' folders that they should be plugging in their long range plans too.
Yep. And I guess you need to do what works best for you. And so I saw the individual teachers' examples, and I just wanted to share this as another option to consider. But
Very good.
Sounds
Thank
like-
you.
Yep. All right, Geraldine, last one. So the final question you had was, what would we recommend for your next goal setting process to be more specific with identifying a targeted curriculum area? And I guess I'm a firm believer in that your data should drive the direction that you need to go whenever you are identifying goals and specific curriculum that you want to address. But now that you're also in that MTSS world, our encouragement would be to also consider the SEBL, the social emotional behavioral learning that also takes place at school, and making sure that all teachers are incorporating that into their classrooms, not just lessons on SEBL specifically, but how the impact that has on the whole culture and climate of each classroom, that it's not just a lesson, but it's also how it's applied within the class. And then to also consider, as you are adopting more instructional materials in the future, to kind of align that process, if possible, with the standards revision schedule that NDE rolls out. I just think that's a nice way to kind of keep things current, and so that your main instructional materials don't become 15, 20 years old, and that can happen very quickly. It's just, so that would be an opportunity maybe to come up with a schedule that you could commit to. And that's quite a lot. I'm sorry. Tried to answer your questions, from our perspective at what we feel that might be helpful for you. Hopefully there's some ideas there that you can run with.
Absolutely.
So I was supposed to tell Jeff if he was being too wordy, and you'll notice I did not give him any cues to hurry along.
I didn't even get a nasty text on my phone, so I guess I made it under the wire.
So anyway, we really appreciate you guys inviting us in. I mean, this has been a lot of information, and we understand that over the past 5 years, your school district has been through a lot of transition, a lot of change with the priority designation, the vote to decide whether or not the school stayed open or not. And so overall commendations, I mean, the number one thing is, just like most small schools, your school is the hub of the community. And I think that was evident in the vote that was taken. That was an overwhelming yes. We want our school to stay open. We talked to board members about the financial components of operating the district. They said we don't hear a lot of complaints about property tax. And I said, I always felt as a district superintendent, that was part of my job, was communicate with patrons about, this is what you're paying in property tax, because some patrons have the misperception that if the school closed, that part of their tax would just go away. And in many cases, that part of their tax would be much higher if they were a part of an adjoining school district. And so, kudos to you guys, the administration, the teachers, the board, the parents. Everybody was supportive of Loup County schools. And what we saw, despite all of those things that have been given to you over the past 5 years as things you need to do, there is a commitment from the district's perspective to improve. And it wasn't just a verbal commitment to improve. We can see through your actions. We can tell with the communication with the teachers, with the students, with the patrons, that you guys have really committed yourselves to making Loup County Schools the best learning environment, the best place that it can be. That preschool is huge. That's the best bang for your buck you're ever going to get is on preschool age students. And so, I also am interested in Rod Olson's discussion about the daycare, because the schools in this area struggle with those same things as far as attracting and retaining teachers. And you guys brought it up. It goes back to housing and daycare. And so if there's a way, oh, Jeff left. If there's a way the school can be a part of that, that is a great investment of your money. And then the ideas that respect is a thing at Loup County schools. We heard that from you guys. We heard it from the students. We heard it from the parents. We heard it from neighboring districts, that is the way you live your life there. And also that you're a family. And I laughed because I said, I also was at a very small school district. And I can remember having a conversation with a group of seniors about, they were talking to each other the same way my 3 children talk to each other. And I said, wait a minute, guys, you can't be talking to each other like that in the school library. You talk like my kids do. And they said, well, we've been together since we were 3 years old. It's just like a family. And I said, I understand that, but you can't talk to each other that way at school. So we're going to have to work on that. But it gets to be just like an extended family. And so that, again, kudos to all of you guys for all the work you've done. We recognize the commitment that you have and all the hard work that has gone into Loup County schools over the last 5 years. It was worth it. Okay, so overall recommendations that we would make would be to continue expanding your MTSS process and scope. And so you've started down that MTSS road, which, we had that discussion too, with the change in the verification guidelines of specific learning disability. That's where we're all headed. We need to be using an MTSS framework. I do think it offers some tremendous opportunities as far as when you live in the world of waiting for a discrepancy model to provide intervention to kids who are struggling. It's kind of a wait to fail model. And MTSS really is a foot in the door of let's be proactive. What can we do for these kids before their academic achievement and ability scores are 20 points apart? And, hopefully that is implemented in your preschool program as well, because that is another great place where you can really make some tremendous change. One thing that we would suggest, so when we talked about MTSS decision rules, and I looked through that document that you sent pretty thoroughly, how do you know when someone moves from tier 1 to tier 2 of instruction? So what things have to happen? All the kids are getting tier 1. What things have to happen in order for those kids to go to tier 2 or to go to tier 3? And is it, if you're looking, and I think Jeff mentioned this too, just at those MAP test scores, that's pretty infrequent. And I know that you guys talked about using Ames Web, that's another thing that you could be looking at a little bit more frequently, but maybe just solidifying, and maybe you have something, but maybe just articulating more clearly what your process is and how you know what kids are receiving instruction in what tier. And I know for reading, there are a lot of research-based interventions out there. For math, that's a little more tricky. And so, considering some of those research-based interventions for math, the high school math teacher, again, got to take my hat off to all of you guys who are driving the bus and then going and teaching an 8-period day or going to be the principal or whatever it is you're doing. You truly are the jack of all trades. But when we were talking to him about MTSS, it sounded like maybe that wasn't happening quite as much in the high school. And I think sometimes high school teachers do that without thinking. I just had a conversation with a teacher who described their new math series, and they said, oh, we have to teach every lesson 4 ways. And I said, you absolutely do not have to teach every lesson 4 ways. You do have to teach every lesson until everyone in the classroom understands it. And we had quite a discussion, which really appreciated your elementary teacher too, because I shared, I have concern with supporting elementary teachers in math instruction, because when I went through college, to be an elementary teacher, you didn't have to have much math background. And when you're asking teachers to explain math at a level of conceptual understanding, not at a level of memorized process, that requires a whole different understanding, especially when you get into 4th, 5th, 6th grade math. That's a whole different level of understanding than some elementary educators would have. And your 3rd and 4th grade teacher has a great math background. So again, you guys have been incredibly fortunate with, it sounds like, attracting and keeping staff. Consider prioritizing change in a way that's sustainable. And I think that was shared too. You know, we heard that it was pretty exhausting when you had to do everything all at once. And so if there's a way that you can prioritize and make a long range plan for that too, whether it's the curriculum alignment, the development of long range plans, whatever it is. You know, we have heard that from the districts in this area. We just want you to hire a curriculum director to align our curriculum. And I keep saying, you know, that's just not the way curriculum alignment works. Number one, if somebody else does it, your teachers have no buy-in. And for number two, it's never done. That is truly just like improvement and ongoing process. And so I think just having a way, you know, again, when you're a small staff, a way of prioritizing that to keep it manageable for everyone. And then the last thing, and this came up more than once, you know, I think probably you guys just have received or are getting a bunch of new devices, and I assume that is a part of the GEARS funding. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so, I mean, great move to use that to upgrade your technology, because it did sound like we heard from multiple levels that technology was maybe a little bit of a challenge. But I think with that, when this comes in as that like shot in the arm of money, it's great to have a plan long-term of how do we keep that up? And so, you know, we're going to put some money aside in depreciation every year that we're going to use to update curriculum at the end of 3 years or whatever it is, so that it's sustainable. Because I have again seen districts, you know, you let technology get to the point where it doesn't work very well and it just becomes a frustration for kids. And I've heard kids say to me, I'd rather just write it out. I don't want to use technology. The computer crashes, it doesn't work. And I think that's doing kids a disservice, because we all use technology in our jobs. And I feel like keeping that a positive experience is really important. And that's, you know, we talked earlier about making those technology standards a part of core instruction too. You know, we don't go to work and do our job and then do technology. We use technology to do our work. And that's, you know, another, well, and I ask teachers too, you know, I have seen schools spend thousands and thousands of dollars on technology, and really the teaching is no different than it was with a notebook and a pencil. And so if we're gonna make that investment in technology, that's obviously a priority for our district. And how are teachers going to use that technology to maybe teach differently too? So I think that's all. It came down to just 3 things that we came up with for recommendations. Do you guys have any questions about any of that?
I do not.
I believe so.
All right, so our next steps, and I think I shared with you at the beginning, our hope is to get together next week, kind of get that report, loose ends tied up. And I know some people have already been working on it today, not me, but we'll get it done. And then we will get that report finished. We'll send it to you and send it off to NDE. And that should be, for now, the end of your external review. So thank you again to everybody. Really, I enjoyed the kids, enjoyed the teachers, the community members. I mean, it's great to be in rural areas of Nebraska. That's what I think. And I think maybe we talked about that. When you talk about discipline problems in this part of Nebraska, most teachers would kill to have those types of discipline problems. And so just an outstanding community, very, very supported school, great commitment on all of your parts to make it the best that it can be.
I'd like to
In
just add,
return, we'd like to, thank you guys for all your work and, you still have to do your own work. I realize that, and you're taking a lot of time to help ours. So you've probably been up late and stuff a few nights. So we do appreciate it, and we hope we don't. You offered us to call and ask you questions. If we get to bugging you about that, calling too much, let us know.
That doesn't happen. I always say I am never going to know everything. And I think that's something we all need to remember as educators. We're never going to know everything we need to know. And I am thankful that I know a little bit about a lot of things, and I have a lot of friends who know more about those things that I can call. So you guys may get calls from me too.
I just wanted to comment that this has been a nice learning experience for me as well. I've done this several times with other schools, but yesterday I was taking some notes as I spoke with your teachers. I spoke with you guys and board members, and so there are a few. Not only do we have recommendations, but there are a few things that I probably have gleaned from you as well, or I'm not a kleptomaniac, but I stole them. Okay.
Well, and that's why I do this, at least, is because it makes me better at what I do. And I've always told my staff, if you ever notice at any time that I have stopped, that I think I know everything I'm ever going to know about education, you should escort me to the door, because education is no place for someone who thinks they know it all.